3 times every Sunday. And every Sunday I had to keep people awake. Got that meeting there, thank you. And I learned very quickly that stories are a good way to communicate. So I've been writing and telling stories and struggling with stories for 51 years now. I changed careers, went into education, did the same thing. Instead of lecturing, I figured out ways to turn the stuff into stories because of the power of stories. About 5 years ago, I've written several books through the years. I wrote my first traditionally published book back in '79, I think. And I did about one every other year with them after that. But it was just about 5 years ago that I decided that, okay, if I'm ever going to write, it's time to start writing. So I just started writing. I had an idea for a short story. I started writing it, and I was more surprised than anybody. It actually turned out to be a novel. It was the first of 3 novels in the series I wrote. Just one kind of long series story, you know, the way series works. I did that. I continue to write my children's books that are fun stories. I wrote a middle grade suspense thriller fantasy that's story-based. Right now, to this morning, I just sent 2 stories to my other traditional publisher with whom I publish a short story every week. I publish a short story that's used for kids as kind of a children's message, children's sermon message type thing, but it's a fun story. I do one of those every week. I just finished this year. I wrote 59 stories since this time last year. They just sent me the list for next year. By this time next year, I have another 66 of them to write, 1 or 2 stories every week. I'm always doing, I think in stories and characters. So that's where I come from. And that's where what I'm going to talk about comes from. What I want to try to explain is how I approach a character. And to do that, I need to sound a little off and just say, in my mind, my characters are just as real as you guys are. I would not be at all surprised if another little window popped up here in a few minutes and one of my characters was in it. In my imagination, in my story voice in here, my characters are there. I don't create my characters. I get to know my characters. I'll tell you how in a second. That's important to understand some of the things I'm going to say. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. I know some authors, I've taken courses and workshops, and I've looked at Agatha Christie's notebooks, which are amazing. I took a course with James Patterson, which was amazing. And those folks, sit down and write all these backstories about the characters. They have all these notes about their characters, how they look, all this kind of, which is wonderful. It's not how I do it. I'm not saying my way's better. I tried their way. It didn't work for me. So I just want to show you maybe a different way of approaching characters just to see how it works for you. See how it works. I have the handout that I gave you. Again, if you haven't seen it yet, the link is there. I have my copy. I'm just going to follow that through. There's a lot of blank spaces on it, and I'm going to have you fill them in as we go, or you can fill them in later. And if you do want to drop me an email afterwards, I'll be happy to send you more of a complete list of all this after we go through, and I'll add anything we might add as we're talking here. My approach to characters. Let me first of all say, I'm not interested really. My goal is not to have people read about my characters. I don't want them reading about my characters. I don't really care if they see my characters the way I see them. So I don't do a lot of description of my characters. I'll say more about that. I don't worry of if they hear my characters the way I hear them. It's just not. I want my readers to experience my characters. I want them to crawl inside my characters, understand what's happening in there. And I just want them to get to know these, kind of like what you guys were saying. Isla stood up to adversity. I don't know what she looked like, but hearing she stood, I can feel it. That to me is important. I was one of my early reviews to my first novel, Disruption. Someone from Scotland actually posted a review that they liked the story, and you hate seeing that in a review. I like the story, but the author really didn't give us much to tell us what Emily Graham looks like. There wasn't enough description. And I happened to get an email from that person later telling me that. She didn't just post the review, but she emailed me to tell me that was a problem. And I talked with her and I said, I'll bet you, however, you're right. I didn't put much description. I didn't say anything about Emily Graham is my lead character in my series of novels, but I really never really describe her. Let me think. What color hair she is, how tall she is, I never did that. But the lady that emailed, I said, I will bet you can tell me exactly what Emily Graham looks like. She said, well, yeah, I know, but I don't know if it's right. I said, well, if that's what it's right for you. You understand Emily Graham. Just to find out, I did a little contest after that on Facebook. And I said, for everybody that's read it, what actress would you suggest play the role of Emily Graham if it were ever to be a movie? Knowing that I'd never given any description other than what Emily did during the story. We got a couple dozen responses, and it was amazing. They all described different actresses, but they were all different actresses by view, but every one of them was a strong female character, had a strong, somewhat sarcastic sense of humor, was a perfectionist, yet tripped over their own shoestrings occasionally, had a temper that she tried to keep under control. They knew the character. So I didn't worry about that. As I wrote the next two stories, I didn't change my approach and put in a bunch of description. My goal is you, my reader, will see the characters. I want you inside them. I want you feeling what they're feeling. I want you understanding what because that to me pulls you further into the story. So with that said, my approach to writing my stories, I came up with the term transformational storytelling, trans with a C, not with an S, to transform something. No. When I write a story and my characters, I want them to pull you into a trance. I don't want you thinking, he wrote good stories, he wrote good characters. I want you sucked into this experience, into this hypnotic trance, if you will. And I want to hang on to you until you get to that last page, the end. And I don't even want you to forget it then. So I try to come up with ways to create that trance. I want to be invisible. I want you lost in the story. And I'm going to show you how I do that. Let me quit talking and let me put you to work. What's that? I love you don't describe characters. Yeah, and it is subjective. Some people love descriptions. I sat down the other day. Now, I've never read much Ernest Hemingway. I just haven't. And there's no real reason. And here a month or so ago, I decided I'm going to read Ernest Hemingway. And I started reading, and it's great stuff, I guess. Hemingway lovers, I apologize. But he gives me too much information to remind me that I'm reading something. And I don't want to think about that. I want to read something that I'm into it, and the writer isn't even there. There's others I've tried. That's my preference alone. So that's how I write. See. So, and I don't give a lot of description for anything. My question, I mentioned the idea, I want to create a trance. Anything at all that might break that trance in my mind, I don't want to put in the book. I will leave it out. And if I start describing stuff, that's me talking to you. And if I do that too much, it breaks the trance. It gets you thinking about, well, he's telling me this and this and all this. I don't want to do that. I want my characters and their behavior to tell you that. I'm going to jump down and put you in here, down to the section here that says learning about characters. If you have the handout here, this is where I want to put you to work a little bit. I look at my characters. There's two ways. There's the external that I've been talking about. There's the internal. I pay more attention to the internal. I'm not going to say much about the character's appearance unless it's critical to the story. If the story depends on it, if for me to pull you into that trance, I need you to see something specific. If there's something because this character has red hair, then I'm going to tell you they have red hair. Somehow I'm going to tell you that. But if that's not important, I don't care what color hair you see. Doesn't matter if it's not a part of the story. Anything that's not critical to the story, it's going to break the trance, and I don't want to do that. I want you caught in that flow thing that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi talked about. So I want to go through this externally. That was the review from Scotland. I didn't give enough external description, but she saw it here. A couple of times that I think external stuff is good. I know Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot. I always get to pronounce that better. I love Poirot and the way Agatha Christie, his description is critical. The way he dresses, that is critical to the story. His finickiness, the way he walks, those are external things that they make an impact on the story. So those things ought to be there. My characters, those things often aren't important, so I'm not going to waste my time with it. If my character limps and that is critical to the story, I'll tell you that. Otherwise, not going to do that. If it supports the trance, I'll keep it. If it doesn't, I'm not going to use it. Now, I'm trying to, let me see. Let's go to work. You have a piece of paper and pencil? I want you to think of a different character. Maybe this is a character you're writing. If somebody said at the beginning, currently you're not writing a character right now, perfectly fine. You're going to make one up on the spot. I don't care. Let's think of a character that maybe it's one you're working on. Maybe it's one that is crossed through your mind. You maybe not know much of anything about them at all, but you've got an idea. I'm working on a new novel right now, the fourth in the Emily Graham series. It's got the traditional bad character in it. All I know right now is that his name is Bobby Ray Hewitt. That's all I know. In a minute, I'll tell you how I found out his name. I didn't make it up. He told me his name. That's how I got it. All I know is he's Bobby Ray Hewitt, and he's the protagonist, the bad guy, the villain in the story. I don't know anything else about him yet because I haven't gone there yet. We're going to start that tonight. I'm going to walk with you through it. So if you get a character in mind, good, bad, evil, positive, whatever, it might be a fantasy character like my square block friend back here. Doesn't matter. I want to go through the things to me that are important, the internal things. And on the sheet here, I've listed some. I'm going to explain them. I'm going to ask you to write a very quick, short sentence for each one of these. I don't want you thinking about it. I don't want you worrying about it, stressing about it. The biggest enemy to creating this type of character is thinking. Don't want you thinking. You don't have to think. Your story voice in here already knows these characters. We just have to meet them and get to know them. That's my belief anyway. And I'm convinced. So here's the first thing I put here on the list is personality type. We're not going to do this one right now. I actually, for each of my characters, I actually do one of the official personality type inventories as my character. I do this after I get to know them a little bit. There's one called the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. You may be familiar with it. There's a short version of it. I put the URL here, 16personalities.com. It's a neat little site. It has like a 50 question thing you go through as yourself or the character, and then it gives you all this information that might be valid for your character. I do that with mine, but not yet. But I put it on here so you can look at it. There's some more of them at the second URL, but let's start with the second one, personal beliefs. And this is what I'm talking about. For the character, don't think about it. Picture your character, even if you don't know what they look like. Maybe you just know their name or you don't even know that, but in your mind, you've got this character. Mine is Bobby Ray Hewitt. That's all I know. My question is, their personal beliefs. Here are 4 things to think about. And I'll be, as I said, I will share this with you. If you want to drop me an email, I'll send you the full list. You can write it down here. I'm thinking of what's their view of human value? How do they value other people? People like them, different than them. How do they view the whole question of right and wrong? Is that a big point to them? Is that a little thing for them? How do they view their faith life? Do they have one? Where does that fit in here? And what's their thought about life and death? Just these big things that deal with personal beliefs. The goal right now is just very quickly in a very short sentence, and I'm going to try it for Bobby Ray Hewitt here. Write a short sentence that very quickly, succinctly summarizes those things. Don't think about it. Just start writing. See what happens. Give it a shot. I'm going to try it here. Death is there.
I'm sorry, what was the last one?
I put down human value, right and wrong, their religious or faith life, their belief about eternal whatever, and then their thoughts about just life and death in general, how they view death, how they view life. It's a vague thing, I realize, but that's part of the point of it. And we're not looking for deep specifics. I just started writing here. I didn't think about it. I kind of in my mind asked Bobby Ray Hewitt, so what's he think of all this? And the first thing he just said, hey, death is there. It's there. You do what you think is right. You do what you know is right is actually what he said. Let me put that here. Do what you know is right. And that's my faith. That's my belief. He's pretty cold. I haven't done this with him before, by the way, either. I'm just walking through it with you just to kind of see. But the goal here, it's hard. I used to work on my characters and I'd stop and I'd think a lot. If I were this character, what would I do? And I can do that. And I could write all this kind of stuff. But I found out that my characters really are more alive if I really believe they're already there. And like I said, I believe my characters are real. I mean, don't worry, I've been tested. But in my story voice, in my mind, that's where my characters come from. I don't consciously create them. They are there, and my goal is to meet them, hear them, get to know them so I can tell their story. I don't write stories. I tell stories that come from all these characters telling me what's going on here. I know it sounds weird, but and I'm not the only one that takes that approach. I realize that too. Okay, the first thing, they're kind of their personal beliefs. Just come up with a short sentence. Don't sweat over it. Go back later if you want to. You can always clean it up. The second topic here, we're going to go quickly because you got to, because I don't want you to think. The second thing is personal relationships. And I've got 4 things here. Number 1, family relationships. What's their history with family? And I'm not thinking, detailed chronological history, but we all have history with certain members of the family, positive, negative, and otherwise. What about friends? And I put in quotes. And Billy Ray already said, who needs friends? Whoa, excuse me a minute. Bobby Ray just told me, who needs friends? My friends are the people who join me in the battle. I don't know if I like this guy. I don't have to. Family relationships, friendship, trust. Bobby Ray doesn't trust anybody. He trusts himself. This is going to be a bad guy. And the last one in a personal relationship is romance, sexuality, gets the whole idea of relationships, marriage, and so forth. There may be 4 categories you want to put under here as you play with this, but these are the main ones I play with just to get a feeling in general. Your character, in a short sentence, describe their whole thing with interpersonal relationships, personal interpersonal relationships. Just get don't think, just kind of scribble stuff down. Bobby Ray, goodness. Trust no one. Wow. Oh, he's a bit of a sexist dude too. Okay. Okay. And again, we're going quick. You can come back and play with this. What the weird part, the first time I did this, I kind of thought I was spinning my wheels, but the longer I did it, the characters really began to open up more. And we're going to do a couple of things. I saved the best stuff for towards the end here, and we'll get to that. That's where you'll really occasionally sit back and go, whoa, this is something. The personal strengths. Look at your character in your mind. Ask your character. Let's do it that way. Ask your character their personal strengths. What are their personal strengths? Things like leadership. Are they just kind of a natural leader? As one of their strengths, their lying ability, their ability to misrepresent the truth. Is their strength, one of their strengths, the ability to do business. They understand how to do business. They understand one of their strengths, maybe their compassion or their lack of compassion. Both of those could be a strength depending on the character. So as you think about, there could be a lot of other strengths. Maybe physical strength is one of their strengths. But for them as an individual, not just for the story we're working on, but for that character as an individual, what are their strengths? Think of your strengths. You have the ability to write. That's a strength. A lot of people don't have it. I work with a lot of people. I always wanted to write, but you guys are writing. That's a strength. That's a cool thing. Maybe Bobby Ray can't write. Never mind. Bobby Ray can't spell. Bobby Ray can't spell. He just told me that. It's a waste of time to read and write. We got things to do, Bobby Ray just said. Okay, so the personal strengths, you kind of get the idea. Just flip that over. The next one, just a short sentence here. What personal weaknesses do they have? And these, they may not openly tell you. You may kind of figure it out. Maybe they have some, let's call them psychic weaknesses or psychological weaknesses. They have a need for affirmation. And without that, it weakens them somehow. They have to be the center. They have to be praised. They have, the type. That can be a weakness. Maybe they actually have a physical, a medical weakness that impacts them. We're not worried so much, does it matter in the story? We want to understand the character, because when we understand them, then we'll understand their behavior that actually creates the story. That's where the stories come from. That's what surprised me about my first novel that I thought was a short story. As the characters became real, they took over the story, and I would sit down to write what I thought I was going to write, but my characters had other things in mind, and they just described what they were doing. And I, at times, just sat back and went, whoa, I had no idea. But it's how it works. We have this story voice in here that to me is just astounding. Other weaknesses, maybe it's an addiction of some type. But what other personal weaknesses do they have that might impact their behavior, might impact who this character is? Just a short little statement here. Bobby Ray is one who needs affirmation. He needs a following. He needs to be recognized. There's something, I don't know what it is, but it's something from childhood. He's trying to prove, make up. I don't know. Maybe he'll tell me later, but that's what I'm just I'm not thinking about it, whatever. The next one I put here is personal wants. Do they want wealth? Do they want power? Do they want control? Do they want to be loved? Do they all think of the natural, normal wants someone might have? What are the wants this character has that drives them? It's a little different than a need. A want is more of an emotional thing in my mind anyway. But again, the idea is just a quick little statement to get your brain working here. Okay, don't want to get off of it here. The cool thing, I will get off of it. I chase rabbits all the time. The cool thing is once you start getting your brain thinking down these paths, it's going to keep going there. When you finally lay down and go to sleep tonight, your brain is going to take all this stuff and it's going to just keep going. And when you wake up in the morning, you're going to find more of this. You'll look at this and go, oh, well, yeah, okay. And it's that story voice thing. It's just amazing to me. The next one I put on here is personal fears. What are they afraid of? Bobby Ray he's not afraid of anything. He tells me. He's afraid of being found out, something. Maybe it's past pains they're afraid of, reliving again, rekindling again. Maybe childhood stuff. They're afraid of having to experience that pain again. Maybe it's a fear of being found out for what they're doing. Maybe it's the fear of a specific enemy. One of my characters in the second book, I think their primary fear was that Emily Graham was going to find out and catch them. And that influenced everything they did. Maybe it's a fear of failure. I don't know. But again, just a short statement. What is it in this character that is the fear? What are they afraid of? The others that I've got here, the next one I ask, you can save for later, but I always ask this: what does the character know that nobody else knows? This one's a little different. And this one you may not know right now, but it's something you want to find out. What do they know that nobody else knows? And then the other one that goes with it, what do they not know that everybody else knows? Just write those down there for later. But the other one you can answer right now, or write a short statement as you think, as you see and picture this character. What is it in those quiet moments? And we all know those moments, either at night when we lay down, just as we're laying there sleeping, getting ready to go to sleep, or maybe it's in a quiet moment when we're all alone and thinking. In those quiet moments, what's going on inside that character? What is that experience like in the quiet moments? Bobby Ray, my impression is he doesn't allow for quiet moments. Those probably are one of his fears as I think about it. There's something in Bobby Ray's past that has made him into this bad person, evil person, angry person, whatever. And in quiet moments, that's when those demons seem to come back. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm avoiding the word thinking because I'm really not consciously thinking of it. It's just, okay. I left space on here too. There's more of these, but the whole idea is just to start trying to peek inside the characters. Don't think about it. And I say that a lot, but when we consciously start thinking about it, to me, that's the number one cause of the thing we call writer's block. I don't buy writer's block per se. Whenever I sit down and I'm really having a hard time thinking, what I usually find out or have a hard time writing, it's usually because I've been thinking too much and not listening enough. My characters are real. And as I really start to understand them, they will tell me what they're doing and why they're doing it and all this. And that's the magic of stories coming out of this voice here. Now, as we went through these, I went very quickly and I realized that you can take as much time as you want, but I usually do this very quickly to start. Some authors, as you know, as I mentioned earlier, create detailed backgrounds and manuscripts filled with backstories and all this kind of stuff. That is wonderful. And if that works for you, wonderful. It's a great thing to have. For me, I rely on basically, I feel like I know my characters just about the way I know members of my family, and I don't. And when I say that, in my family members, may know their backstory, but what I really know about them is what's happening in their mind because of all that backstory. I really want to know the why. I want to know what's happening in here. And if they're in a certain situation, how might they respond? That's what I'm after. To me, that's the magic of a story. When I write something that surprises me, my hunch is that's what surprises my readers. And that's what I'm being told as well. So I try not to think. I tried James Patterson's approach. Before James Patterson writes anything in a book, he creates a full detailed outline of every chapter. That's how he can do so many books, which is wonderful the way he does this. And that's how he can work with other writers so much. They get a story concept, they write a very detailed outline of every chapter all the way to the end. So they know it's a good story. They know how it ends. They know all of the ups and downs all the way through. They know all of the arcs of characters and all that. And then they sit down and write that. I tried that, doesn't work. I sit down and I put my characters in the situation and I watch what happens and I write it down. My characters in my warped mind are real. And I've said that before. So rather than create all this backstory, I have a basic short list of what I want to know about my characters. It grows over time. Basically, I fill it in this way. My character is driven to blank, 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 because blank, 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 so they can blank, blank, blank. Does that make sense? My character is driven to what? Bobby Ray Hewitt, I don't know that I can answer it yet, but I will. Bobby Ray Hewitt is driven to whatever it is he's doing. They're building an attack on something. He's driven to do that because of all of this anger. I know that. And I don't know what his ulterior, I don't know if he's going to rule the world. Does he have that kind of fantasy? I don't know yet. But I know right now that this is a driven character who is dangerous because the drive is overwhelming and it's out of control. Like I said, in those quiet moments, he's not going to reflect. He's not going to think, am I doing the right thing? That's not it. He's not worried about making friends. If you're with him, you're a friend. If you're against him, you need to be destroyed. I mean, I didn't know that when we started here tonight, but okay. That's how this works for me. And as I do this with each of my characters, and then I put them all into the situation, it happens. It's just amazing to me. I have, under the section I put getting to know your characters, I put down John's character laws. These are not laws. They're my laws. They're how I do this. This is my view of my characters. Number one, I see my characters as real. I said that. This is a law for me. My characters are real. Psychologically, you can worry about me if you want to. I know they're probably not actually carbon-based out there, but in my mind, they're just that real. They are there. They're always there, even when I'm not writing about them. While we're sitting here talking, Bobby Ray Hewitt is out there. I don't know what he's doing. I'm a little concerned about that right now. as I'm getting to think about him or understand him. But in my imagination, my story voice believes he is there. He is there right now, somewhere at 6:45 Central Time. He is there. He is doing something. And my story voice is going to work with that and just keep going. And when I put my Emily Graham character in there at the same time and they start, that's the magic for me. Law number 3 for me is I'm not creating my characters. I do not create my characters. I'm learning about and writing about my characters. I have to get to know them, which is what we're talking about doing here. And we'll end with a few examples in a few minutes of the fun ways of really doing this that will really, it'll make you look a little strange sometimes, but that's okay. And the 4th rule for me is I have to trust my characters. They know the story, I don't. They're telling me the story. My first story, as I mentioned, the novel, I knew after a while, I knew how the story had to end. The first one was about a riverboat that was hijacked on the Mississippi River. They were taking it up the river, and I had maps of the river and all this, doing all this. And I had picked out the spot up north where the good guys were gonna win and catch the boat. I knew that was where it was gonna end, up above St. Louis, way up there. But when they finally got to St. Louis, I'm giving something away, but never mind. When they finally got to St. Louis, I sat down and I started writing, and Emily Graham suddenly did something right then that ended it. And that wasn't my plan, but Emily just did it. And in my imagination, she looked at me and said, hey, this is my story. This is how it goes. I trusted her, and it turned out much better than the way I was going to do it. I trust my characters. So my characters for me are real. They're always there. They're going all the time, always doing something. I'm not creating them, but I'm writing about them. I'm learning and writing about them, and I have to trust them. They know the story. I don't. Up with the characters first, then come up with the plot. I have an idea of the situation I'm going to put them in. For example, Bobby Ray Hewitt, I know that for those who may have seen any of my first 3 books there, they usually center around some evil harebrained group that's trying to disrupt how things are done. Bobby Ray Hewitt is leading a group of people who are planning something, some type of I don't know if it's national or global. I don't know, because it's changed, but I know he's the head of this underground group somewhere who are planning this. I don't know what it is yet. I know they are doing this, and it is very real. It is a very real threat. They have power. They have the ability. They have the support of an extremely powerful group behind them that's fueling all of this stuff in my novels. I know that. So if that's the plot, it's not really. That's kind of the, what would you call it? The theme. It's the thread we're going to follow. There's some type of an attack that has to be somehow countered. Once I start to discover that, then somehow I have to learn from Emily Graham how they're going to end up stopping this kind of thing. And I probably won't know that for quite a while. It's an iterative process of me learning from my characters. And that's where it comes back to trusting. If I said, I tried to write the full outline the first time and plan it all out. And it took the magic out of it for me. I knew where it was going. And so for me, it was a thinking process. And it was difficult to write about because I was actually writing about something that has already happened. Does that make sense? It had already, because I've already outlined it. I know what's coming. And I've found for me, it's been highly more effective and highly more fun if I'm discovering it the same way and the same time the reader does. It worried me in the second and third novel because, what if they don't tell me? What if I get to a point and they quit talking to me? It's never happened because they're real. And from the beginning, it's all surprises for me. And I'm serious about the number of times I've been sitting here typing and I'll just sit back and go, whoa, where did that come from? Because somewhere, some night while I'm sleeping, my neurons had connected all these things and came up with this. And as I'm writing, it told me about, I'm writing it down. I'm just typing going, holy cow, wow, holy cow. That's fun for me. Now, if you're more the other side of the outlet, it's wonderful. That's where it all comes back to subjective, what works best for you. When I get caught up in the story, I also had somebody say, but if you don't write an outline, how do you know there's going to be continuity? How do you know you're not going to put something out of order? I'm not worried about that right now. I'm not worried about, is everything in the right order? I can fix that later. Right now, my goal is to get this thing out of my head, get it out here where I can see it. And then if I need to move something around, I can do that. But in my experience, my characters tell me step by step what's coming. And this is what I did here. And when I'm done with it, I go back and I'll tweak it and do the normal editing stuff. But the story is there. It's what they did. Who am I to change it? Okay. I'm not saying that is absolutely the best way to do it, but it's how it works for me. Let's do a couple. Let me give you a couple of activities to try outside of tonight. Some of them will make you look very strange. All right. We all need to look strange occasionally. One of the things that I have done that has been the most meaningful for me, as I get to know my characters a little bit, and you may know them enough. I know Bobby Ray Hewitt enough right now that I could do these, and each of them will tell me more. Let me give you, I wrote a list under where it says activities. You treat them as real. Here's the list I put there. Number 1, tomorrow morning, when you sit down to read the news or stand to read the news on your pad or whatever, read the news as your character. What you know of your character now. Don't look at it the way you would. But as you sit down and you pick up your phone or whatever in your character, in your mind's in imagination, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm going to be Bobby Ray Hewitt. And I'll start looking at it. And just don't think, but just note the reactions and how different they are probably than your normal reaction would be, your personal reaction would be. I know that Bobby Ray Hewitt in the morning when I try this is going to respond to the news a lot differently than I do. I have no question about that. And that then leads me to wondering, why did he react to this and not to this, and I don't stop and think about it, but that's food for my story voice. And then it goes to work subconsciously while I'm doing all this other, and then it gives me back this totally new view of Bobby Ray Hewitt. So the first one, read the news tomorrow morning as Bobby Ray Hewitt or as your character. Similar to this, Go through the next time you sit down with your social media tonight, look at it as your character. And if your character's upset about something or has a response, go ahead and type the response. Don't send it. Don't send it. You got to be careful with this. But as you go through your social media, how would your character respond to this post? It's just gives you another view from another angle of the character. If you really want to challenge, pick a day and decide you're going to spend that day, as much of it as possible, as that character. That doesn't mean you have to dress differently, although I've had folks do that. But I'm going to basically view my whole day, go through my day as that character. I've got to be careful. I did this with a character early on, and I had to go to a meeting, and my character was not at all happy to be in that meeting. And he had things he wanted to, or she had things, if I recall. It was Emily Graham. She doesn't tolerate egos very well. People who like to strut and all that. And I sat in a meeting where there was somebody there just really impressing us with how great they are. And Emily was screaming inside my head. I couldn't say what she was saying, but I learned a lot about Emily Graham. And so I spent the day as her and just kind of observed things. Drive around. Get in your car and drive around as your character. I did this the other day with another character in the next book. And I know something happens here near where I live. I wasn't sure where it was, but I knew something. I like writing about the Midwest where I live because there aren't a lot of books about the Midwest. So I just figured, yeah, it's like channeling the characters. It's kind of what we're doing here. I don't use that word a lot. I scare enough people when I use the word trance that I've learned to be careful. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. And it's not really that. We're just getting in touch with this imagination, the story voice we have. We all did it when we were children. We lived every day with our story voice. Everything we saw was a story. The little kid, and we did this, and guess what? And we did this, and guess what? And we did this, and you know what? And we did, and we do that. But then we learn as we get older to not pay as much attention to that story voice. We need to be serious now. We need to sit with our hands folded, and we need to walk and not push. We know that. We're learning how, once again, to get back in touch with that magic that's in here, that's filled with stories. We don't have to struggle to find them. They're here. Our brain, how old are you? Your brain has spent that many years creating stories. We just kind of have to train ourselves to get back to stop thinking and start listening again. That's all we're doing here. I went driving around as one of my characters. I actually as Emily Graham the other day, because I was trying to think, which was the problem. So I just started driving around, and I drove past a building, and there was a railroad track by it. And I just heard in my voice, that's where it is. That's the place right there. And I pulled over, and I wasn't conscious. And I said, what there? And then I realized that's where it is. And my story voice took that and began putting more pieces together. And I don't know what it's doing in there right now, because I'm thinking about what we're doing here. But I know, okay, the story, I know one place it's going to be because it's told me that. And they're building the underground thing there right now. I know it. Bobby Ray is probably there. It's 7 miles in that direction right now. I know the place. And I would almost bet you Bobby Ray Hewitt's there right now. That's the weirdness of all this kind of stuff. Try this. Next time you go to a coffee shop, a restaurant or something, go as that character. What do they have? What do they do while they're standing in line and the person in front of them is flipping through trying to find this coupon and it's taking forever? Or they're at the coffee shop and the person in front of them is taking forever looking at the menu that they've seen every day for 3 months, trying to decide, do I want a mocha or do I want a frap? And your character is the one standing behind them, not you. How does that character respond? Is it just all internal? Do they get frustrated? Do they storm? Don't think about it. Try it. Experience it. Don't act on it. Again, I recommend that. It could lead, if I went in as Bobby Ray, I would learn a lot, but I don't want to actually act on that. They do exist. They may not be carbon-based, but they're as real as everything. Let's get philosophical for a minute. Everything in reality This is the new stuff they're studying with all the quantum physics and all of the other stuff that is well beyond my limited thoughts here. Everything we experience in the world is just perception. Apples are not red. Apples are made out of elements that when sunlight falls on them, it creates this color we have called red. That's the physics side of it. That's as real as any, So if we really wanted to get philosophical and really shake things up, the characters we find that our imagination creates, they're real. Maybe not physical, but they're real. You've done that. Here's one to try if you really want to be daring. Occasionally, I come to a point in a story where I honestly don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe I'm thinking about it. I don't know what Bobby Ray is going to do next. I just don't know. What I've done is at night before I go to bed, I'll come in here to my computer and I will send an email to Bobby Ray Hewitt. I actually send it to me, but I entitle it to Bobby Ray. I address it to Bobby Ray and I ask Bobby Ray the question. What were you thinking when you did this or whatever? Or why did you do this or whatever? And it sounds dumb. Then I get up in the morning. I send the email. I don't think about it. I send it and then I go to bed. When I get up in the morning, I come in and I sit down and I respond to that email, not thinking about it, but I just imagine in my imagination, Bobby Ray is responding. And the amazing thing is he does. My characters will do that. That's where I know it sounds weird. The channeling, maybe that's it or whatever. But again, it's just our imagination. It's another way for us to get in touch, to give our imagination permission to speak to us. Send your characters emails, send them text messages, and then give it some time for your imagination, your story voice to get a hold of it, and then give it the opportunity to respond. The first time I tried it, I thought to myself, this is kind of stupid. This will never work. I got up the next morning and I was amazed. As crazy as it sounds, it works. It works. A couple more I'll just put here and then we'll wrap stuff up. I got a couple of other things for you. If you watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, Hulu, any of those things, sit down and just flip through all of the listings there as your character. What appeals to them? My first reaction here is Bobby Ray doesn't watch. He's not going to do that. Movies? Yeah, I got to save the world. He's not into movies. If he does, the only movies my hunch is he might get into Rambo. I don't know for sure. I'll have to let that percolate a bit. But things that you normally do, have your character do it and just pay attention. Don't think, what would he do here? What would she do here? Just go through it, and in your imagination, it's your character doing it. Read things. Every day when I look at newspapers, I pick out 5 or 6 newspapers from around the world and just browse through them. I got one in England I always look at, one in Spain, Germany, Bulgaria, Samoa. I don't know. There's 5 or 6 I look at every day just to feed my story voice. It's stuff that, and I don't wonder how could I use this, but I just put this in here and here it comes, and my story voice later brings it back, and I'm amazed that happens. Those are some of the tricks to use, and I call them tricks because we're tricking our logical thing that we've all developed so that we don't start thinking again. But our characters are there. They're real. Our challenge is to get to know them in a real way and not really believe that we are creating them. It's we're going to get the handout. Yes. Up at the top, there should be a couple of links. I see a couple of them. You can download a copy. And as I mentioned, if you want to send me an email when we're finished, you've got I'll put my address here if you don't have it. I will send you, I'll be happy. I will not try to sell you a bunch of stuff, but I will send you some of the other list things here. I actually have a list of, I don't know how many there are, 100? I'll have to look. A list of questions. I interview my characters periodically. I'll sit down, I'll have my list in my imagination. I'll pick out 5 or 6 questions out of the interview list and I'll ask and I'll answer them as my character would. When I find myself stopping to think, I stop until I can sit down again and just let it happen. I'll be happy to send you the lists I use and so forth. just to kind of help, spark that kind of creativity. On the last page of the handout, I put down some activities. We don't really have time to do these, but I'll be happy to send this to you. Matter of fact, let me do this real quick. Hang on, don't go away. I've got it right here. There it is. Let me find it. I'm going to put these in the chat because this will help. We'll see, come down here. These are some questions to ask about your character, and it's a little tricky to see the chat window. For example, right now, does your character wear a mask with COVID? Are they vaccinated? Why or why not? Bobby Ray Hewitt is not vaccinated. And a mask? No. I know that. I don't even have to think about that. How would your character respond if they're driving down the road and someone's riding right on their tail? They're driving the speed limit and there's this person, you know how that goes. How would your character react to that? And I put, they're waiting in line. Your character's driving down the road and they notice a police car appears to be following them. What happens inside your character? Don't think about it. Just see yourself as a character and it's there. These are all things that, again, help us get beyond the thinking and get into the inside of our character. And one of the fun ones I put at the bottom here, you're going to go to dinner with your character. All right. And you could actually do this if you wanted to. Where do you go and why? What do they eat? Why? What do they talk about? Why are you having dinner together anyway? What's their favorite food? These things sound trivial, but they're all things that when we throw it all in here and put this food in here to our story voice, it gives it more. I did this one, and in one of my stories later, I think it was my third book, I think it was the third novel, I had no thought of this. I actually did this with the character at the very beginning. Partway through the book, a whole scene erupted because somebody tried to get this character to eat something, and it was something that when they saw it triggered something, and it happened because I had done it. This really works. It's astounding to me that it does. The whole point of all of this, I appreciate your patience. Those whose pictures aren't up here, if you're actually still here, I do appreciate that. The main thing of all of this is something magical happens for me when I stop thinking about trying to create my characters. And I really begin to view these characters are real. My task is just to come up with whatever I can do to get to know them. And tricks like email, tricks like just answering the questions, go back up to the top where I put that link to that personality inventory. That's really better to use a little bit later when you know your character a little more, then you can answer some of those. It's fun to do. Okay, I'm gonna stop. There's more I could say, but I will never stop if I don't. Let me just see right now if there are any comments, any questions, anything we talk about that just doesn't make any sense, or anything anybody wants to throw in. Anybody? Either in chat or on live, doesn't matter. Scroll in. Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. Is it okay to create a character out of compositive real people? Absolutely. A couple of caveats with that. Be careful with that. If it's a good character, that can be a great thing. People will say, did you base that on me? And they feel kind of flattered. I've done some evil characters. You did that on me, didn't you? And that, fortunately, I can say, oh, no. Wasn't even thinking of you, which was true. You've got to be careful basing it on somebody real, partly just because of relationships, partly because, the potential of defamation of character. Some people are pretty touchy today. And if they feel that you're kind of singling them out as a character, making them look bad, some people take that. So just be careful with it. Have it, maybe they're the seed, or maybe I guess the question is, what is the characteristic? What is their characteristic that's driving this? And how can you use that in a way that's safe without saying, I'm basing this on my brother Tom? You don't want to do that. That's not a good thing. Does that make sense?
Basing on yourself.
Basing it on yourself would be kind of the same thing. My first question is why? Are you actually basing it on you, or is it some, are you writing an autobiography, a memoir, or is there some specific experience or character trait? My question would be, why are you basing it on yourself? Not that it's a bad thing. It could be a good or bad kind of thing. I guess anytime we're basing a character, I guess here's my question. Is that really who the character is? It's really not your choice. From my perspective, I don't choose if my character is like someone, not consciously. My characters tell me who they are. I didn't mention names, by the way. I don't create names for my characters. They tell me their names. I gave you a link up towards the top somewhere. No, I guess it's toward somewhere in here. There's a really cool website when you need to spark some ideas. Oh, it's it's on the first page. Random generators. There's lots of these. People use these a lot. Story generators. There's a place called seventhsanctum.com. They've got all types of story generators. You need an idea for a story, you can click a button and it'll say, there's a guy that did this who got caught, it'll give you all that. I normally don't do that because, again, my characters will tell me the story, but I often use their name generators. And what I do is I'll tell it, because it gives you the choice. Do you want fantasy names? Do you want, what type of names? I'll do that. And then it kicks out a list of 50 possible first and last names. What I do then, I don't try to figure out which ones. I imagine in my mind, I am the character. That's how I got Bobby Ray Hewitt's name. I was the character in my mind, and I started going down. And when I saw Bobby, he said, that's me. But the last name wasn't. So I just kept going. And I came down, and when I got to Hewitt, which was with the whole other first name, Bobby Ray said, that's me, Bobby Hewitt, but you don't have it all yet. So I'm going, okay. And it's weird. It's just weird, but it works. Your story voice already knows. I'll use the random generator to give my story voice a lot more food to chew on and spit back out what it needs to tell me. Behind the name is, yeah, and Bobby Ray Hewitt, part of that subconsciously is because I think Bobby Ray Hewitt is a good Southern boy. At least I would guess that from the name, Bobby Ray. I could be mistaken because I really haven't thought about it yet. It'd be interesting if Bobby Ray Hewitt was actually from someplace like Connecticut or Manchester. I'll have to, that would be interesting. Then I'd have to figure out how did a guy in Manchester become named after somebody that more likely would be in Mississippi? I don't know. But that's what makes cool characters to me. I don't know. I don't have to know. They will tell me what I need to know. And anything else? Let me look, see, I haven't missed anything here. Okay. Again, if my email, let me put it here. I think it's already there. There's my email and my website. So you can see what else I might be up to if you're at all interested. But I'd love to hear, drop me an email. I'd love to hear what you thought of this evening. Was it helpful? I intentionally chose not to do a bunch of PowerPoint slides that I usually do with these because I just get tired of staring at PowerPoint slides, and I'd rather see you guys. Let me know what you thought. If you have thoughts or suggestions, if there are other things you'd love to get together and talk about. I know the library is always looking for program ideas. They've got a really cool book group that's looking for ideas and so forth. And if you've got suggestions, I know we'd all love to hear them and see what we can do there. Yeah, to me, it is a more fun approach, but that's subjective. I know other writers who really. I have a good friend who writes kind of police procedurals. He used to be a police officer in New York. He was actually an officer in New York on 9/11. and, was part of the responder thing. Partly because of his background and training, he really likes to structure everything out. And it works for him, which